it became clear, probably when I was in college, that this was work that would use all of my skills and interests and passions well. But, did I ever feel like God was reaching out and commanding me, you have to do this work, Ruhi? Not so much. But that makes sense, because I always saw the very pragmatic side of the work, since I grew up with it in my home with my parents doing the work. I didn't have any romantic or mystical views of what a rabbi's life was. My parents have shared the pulpit of a single synagogue for their entire career, which at this point is 30 years. They'd be great for you to interview. That which loves me unconditionally and to which I am completely obligated. I have had very rich multi-faith experiences. I have an ex from college who's now a pastor, and we're still really close. It was a very educational and fraught relationship, because we were both so committed to our traditions and to our futures in our traditions, and cared about each other so much, and still care about each other so much. And I learned a lot about a lot of beautiful things about Christianity from that relationship. I think there's a great deal of similarities between many of the traditions I've studied, and I have studied religion. I was a comparative religion major in college. I am very much a comparative religion person in my understanding of the validity of all religions, and I'm very committed to multiculturalism, which is that I think people should embrace their roots. I think Jews should be Jewish. I think Christians should be Christian. I think people should do the very best they can to find their truth in the faith of their background. That it is a powerful thing to be rooted in a spiritual home, and a very rich thing. To have an indigeneity of faith is a powerful thing, which doesn't mean a person can't adopt another faith, just like a person can move to another land, but that there is a richness of experience, just like there is a richness of experience that to a certain extent is only available to people who are indigenous to a place. I think there is a certain richness of experience that is always only available to people who are indigenous to a certain tradition. Religion is a very Protestant term, and Judaism, for example, has never mapped well to the notion of religion, because Judaism, for most of history, was a living ethnic culture that impacted and made demands on how people worshipped, how people lived, where people lived, how they ate, how they dressed, and very little, actually, how they believed. Or how they believed was, how Jews believed has always been somewhat peripheral to the core of Judaism and Jewish identity. So something that has happened as a result of Judaism in the West being subject to Christian hegemony is that Judaism has become more of a religion and moved away from the practices that look more cultural, ethnic, and people now seat Jewish expression in a synagogue, in religious communities of worship. But I would say it remains the case that the richest aspects of Judaism are about practice, about ritual, about doing and being together rather than believing together or believing the same way. Certainly in this community that I serve, there's a vast multiplicity of beliefs about and relationships to the divine. We have folks who are adamantly atheist, but, show up almost every week for services because they're adamantly atheist, but they're adamantly Jewish, and this is the way they can be Jewish. We have folks who have a very personal relationship with God. We have folks who feel a relationship of obligation to social justice, which is connected to their theology. But, like I said, because Judaism's not creedal, despite the fact that there is, there's certainly creedal messaging in our liturgy, because Judaism is largely based on communal behaviors and communal rituals together, And it helps that our liturgy isn't in the vernacular that most people in this community speak. So if they don't like what it's saying, they don't have to pay attention to it in a way that they would if it were in English. There is more room for a multiplicity of beliefs. There are questions I wrestle with. They're mostly questions of obligation. So, for example, especially in a time right now when there's so much need, I wrestle with how I balance my obligations to the Jewish people, which are very real for me and very particular, with my obligations to the whole world and to all of humanity. And I understand myself to be, as I said, infinitely obligated, and there's no way I could ever meet all of my obligations in just one of those spheres, let alone in all of them. So every day I have to wrestle with whether, how close to right can I do by all of these communities that I'm part of.
So are you feeling overwhelmed sometimes?
All the time. Well, I do pray. I do call on God for help. I do take moments for mindfulness and meditation and connection every day. And I do remind myself how blessed I am. One of my cornerstone motivations, not just to action but to faith, is knowing how good my life is relative to most humans in the world, and that we can even do this, and knowing that I have no right to despair. I have no right to give up or feel overwhelmed, because I'm so blessed. But also because I'm so blessed, I'm very wary of theologies that talk about how, God is just in this realm, or God is taking care of each person and giving each person what they can handle, only what they can handle. Because certainly God hasn't ever given me more than I can handle, but I'm really blessed, and to look at the state of the world and say, yes, this is fair, and God is only giving each person what they can handle, it seems almost morally callous to me. There is a Jewish teaching that human beings are created to be partners in the continuing of God's creation, and to me, the way I interpret that is, it's not very mystical, it's just very sort of pragmatic, I suppose. When I look around, I see that God created a world that is beautiful and diverse and wild and chaotic and infinitely beloved, but not a world that is just, not a world that is fair. And so when I think about the human mandate to be partners in creation, I think that, one of the things that involves is that it's our job to create justice. And we don't always do that well with that. I would say justice is a human construct. I wouldn't say that God is unjust. I would say, when I look at the priorities with which God created the world, justice does not seem to be high on that list. That doesn't mean, but I do think that we serve God by pursuing justice. I can best talk about this through this metaphor, which is totally mine. It's not a traditional Jewish metaphor. Yeah. I want my body to be healthy, and I want each and every cell in my body to be healthy, but the way my body is designed, I don't notice if a cell dies. I'm not supposed to notice if a cell dies. And I sort of have this understanding of myself as a cell in the God organism. And, I know what I need to do in order to function well and for the whole organism to be healthy. And certainly the cells matter. There's things I could do that could really mess up the health of the organism. And there's ways I could be that are in right relationship with the health of the whole organism. But I don't expect that organism to be individually aware of and taking care of my personal well-being. Though I do expect that organism to have an infinite love and interest in my general well-being. There are multiple Jewish theologies of afterlife, and it's not the main focus of Judaism, because, this is particularly telling if you read the Bible. When the Bible talks about reward and punishment, reward and punishment is always in terms of this world. So, if you behave well, you and your children and your children's children will thrive on the land, for example. That's the reward. The reward isn't like what's going to happen to your soul after you die. So for me, the most potent afterlife, I imagine, is a viable planet for human life. And, this baby that I'm gestating getting to grow to an old age and hopefully pass on some of the ethical teachings I have taught him or her.
So as far as you personally living beyond your body, that's not something that you put much emphasis on?
Yeah, it's not that I don't believe in it, it's that it doesn't bother me. I'm happy to let the mystery be and trust that, I have a strong tradition telling me how to live in this world, and whatever is supposed to happen in the next world, I'll have the tools then that I need to have to live that. To me, and this is very informed by the values of Judaism, there is no finding any sort of religious truth with God absent community. That you can seek God and seek God and seek God as an individual, and that's not where I think God is.